This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to learn more about how Surfshark lets you browse the web freely and securely, plus get an additional 4 months for free when you sign up using offer code SKILLUP at surfshark.com/skillup. Gamers, hope you've been having a fantastic week. Me, it's been pretty damn good. I've been playing plenty of Monster Hunter Wilds since I didn't have time to get to it in February, and I can confirm that the Kinsek Glaive remains the GOAT weapon. I know this because I've been forcing myself to use a switch axe on this playthrough, and nothing against it, but it doesn't hold a candle to my pole vault stick, and I genuinely cannot understand how so many of you have played Monster Hunter with your feet so firmly planted on the ground all the time. I just don't get it. I had been planning to actually review Monster Hunter Wilds this week, but I had to put it down because code for Assassin's Creed Shadow came in, and I'm currently playing through that one right now. Obviously can't say anything about it yet since I'm under embargo, but the review for that one will go up sometime next week. So if you'd like to know the minute that review is live, be sure to subscribe and ding the notification bell, or click the follow button over on Spotify, since you can also watch Skill Up videos over there now as well. All right, lots to get to this week, so ain't nothing to it, but to do it, here comes the news. Biggest story of the week is one we cannot verify, so it's important that you take it with a grain of salt, but it does fit within the general contours of what is likely true, given everything that Phil Spencer has said in the past. I'm referring, of course, to the Windows Central report that the Switch 2 might not be the only new handheld console releasing this year, as Microsoft allegedly has plans to release an official Xbox handheld this year and has much bigger hardware plans in the years to come. So we all know that across all the Steam Deck competitors like the Asus ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go, many of them are running Windows 11 under the hood. Microsoft has in the past partnered with some of these manufacturers to make out-of-the-box Xbox Game Pass support a big selling point for them, which you can't do on the Steam Deck unless you sideload Windows onto it, which you can absolutely do, but it's kind of a pain in the ass, and honestly, SteamOS is a way better experience, so most people just don't bother. Now, Windows Central reportedly has sources telling them that Microsoft has been actively working with a PC gaming manufacturer like Asus or Lenovo or MSI, though we don't know which, to make a quote Xbox branded gaming handheld, surprisingly slated for later in 2025 if plans are met, end quote. Codename for this project is Kennen, and Windows Central is being told that it will look, quote, unmistakably Xbox, complete with an official Xbox guide button and Xbox design sensibilities, end quote. Couple this together with some announcements from Microsoft at the beginning of the year, saying that they were working on Windows UI adjustments that would be more Xbox-like for handhelds, and you can definitely see all the pieces coming into place on this one. Add to that the fact that Valve has started licensing its OS to these manufacturers to make third-party Steam Decks, letting people get away from the Windows ecosystem, and you can imagine Xbox feels like they're going to get kicked out of this party unless they act sooner rather than later. That's not all Windows Central sources had to say. Apparently, in addition to the partnered handheld coming in 2025, Microsoft are allegedly also on their way to developing their next generation of hardware, a project that has been, quote, fully greenlit all the way up to CEO Satya Nadella, end quote, and it will feature not only a successor to the Xbox Series consoles and new controllers, but Microsoft's own Xbox gaming handheld as well. Now, this phase is planned for 2027, and even though there have been comments from Xbox executives in the past suggesting they've been thinking about a handheld device for quite some time, it seems like they haven't been able to fully commit themselves until now. If these reports are true, then it seems like they're looking for a way to strike while the iron is hot with the handheld PC gaming wave, while also doing their due diligence on the internal projects. And if all of that peters out before they're too far in, well, they wouldn't have lost too much. Also, remember that Xbox hardware roadmap that leaked as part of Microsoft's beef with the FTC during the acquisition lawsuit? That presentation suggested a bunch of stuff that kind of lines up with these reports too, meaning the fact that their next hardware generation was planned for 2028, and that it would focus on leveraging the cloud a lot more, which is certainly where they're headed right now, given the whole this is an Xbox thing. That said, that same roadmap also pointed to a cylindrical Xbox Series X refresh in 2024, and that never ended up happening. So as always, keep in mind that these things can and probably will change behind the scenes, and to take all of this with a big grain of salt. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of this is true. Are these inspired moves likely to drive market share and big gains for Xbox, or are they misguided plays likely to keep Microsoft in third place? Honestly, here's my take. I don't really think all of this matters that much, especially not to Microsoft. What I mean by that is, Microsoft is a trillion-dollar corporation that spent $70 billion to buy Candy Crush and Call of Duty. When these people think about profits, they're aiming for hundreds of billions of dollars from enterprise products and AI. You think Microsoft's C-suite really cares about a third-party manufactured handheld with some Xbox stickers on it? How much margin's in that? Even next-gen hardware, Microsoft are clearly more interested in getting you to play games through xCloud than they are their dedicated devices. I said this multiple times before, but I really do believe that Xbox hardware will transition into the Microsoft Surface category of hardware, in the sense that it'll exist as an optional way to engage the Microsoft ecosystem, but it won't be core to Microsoft's business. Do they want you to buy a Surface laptop to use Microsoft Word? Sure they do, why not? But do they care if you're using Word on a Dell or an IBM ThinkPad? No, they don't give a fuck. The only hardware Microsoft cares about these days is their cloud infrastructure, which powers every part of their business, from enterprise to AI right through to gaming. That's hardware that Microsoft gets to charge you monthly to access, and that's far more appealing to them than a box they sell you once every 7 or 8 years at a profit margin of around $100. While we're talking about handheld hardware, it's probably worth mentioning this little tidbit about the Switch 2. This past week, The Verge spotted FCC filings for Nintendo's upcoming hardware, which is par for the course for electronics manufacturers as they let regulatory bodies know everything is in order and up to code. The details include the fact the Switch 2 will continue to support near-field communication, aka NFC, aka the wireless tech that makes amiibos work, and it will be in the right Joy-Con like it was in the original Switch. Another neat fact is that the console will be charged via either the bottom USB-C port or the new top USB-C port, and it will also support the faster Wi-Fi 6 protocol. Wi-Fi 6 is actually really good if you can be close enough to a router to use it. Who knows, maybe the Nintendo eShop might go from a 6-minute load time down to a brisk 3 minutes. That'd be nice. From the big N to the big P, and by P I mean PlayStation of course, Sony's favorite son Neil Druckmann said a bunch of stuff about Naughty Dog's next project Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, and he did so in a Sony-organized creator-on-creator chat between him and film director Alex Garland. From what we can gather, it feels like Intergalactic is still relatively early in its development cycle, which in today's AAA terms means we could only be like 4 years into an 8-year development cycle. Druckmann said that Naughty Dog still has, quote, a ways to go, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. These things are so complex and big, and there's so many people involved. I still don't know exactly what this thing is going to look like at the end. I have a theory, I have an idea, but still evolving and changing as we make it, end quote. Other details include the fact that one of the key themes of Intergalactic is loneliness, as you'll be a lone bounty hunter exploring a planet that's long been cut off from the rest of the galaxy. And finally, Druckmann quipped that after Naughty Dog made everyone really mad with The Last of Us Part 2, the team wanted to make a game that touched on less controversial topics like, quote, faith and religion, end quote. Hey, we got a comedian over here. While we're talking about game makers with a sense of humor, we got to check in with Mr. Next Level Shit, Mr. Fuck the Oscars himself, Joseph Fares, seemingly the only person who remembers that co-op campaigns are great, actually. It turns out that all those sales and Game of the Year awards for Hazelight's last co-op adventure, It Takes Two, were not a fluke, because Split Fiction has been having a hell of a run since its launch last week. We talked a little bit about Monster Hunter Wilds achievements last week, and while Hazelight are definitely not at that sort of Capcom level yet, they are still absolutely killing it, and we have to give them a huge round of applause for that. Split Fiction debuted with an Open Critic aggregate score of 90, which has pushed it to the top of 2025's most universally acclaimed games, right next to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. On Steam, it clocked a historic concurrent player count of 260,000 players, and Hazelight announced that it had sold 1 million copies of Split Fiction in just the first 48 hours. We'll talk about this again in the review roundup, but man, you have to remember that for every copy of Split Fiction sold, there are at least 2 people playing it, possibly even more given the friend pass situation, so they've done extraordinarily well. On that note, Fares has been out there on the publicity circuit and has been dropping bits of insight into his values as a designer and creator. Over on the Fall Damage channel, he reacted to a bunch of YouTube comments. One of them brought up his position on in-game spending, or rather the lack of it in Hazelight's games. Here's what he had to say, quote, I think those kind of shifts affect the design of how the game should be done. Every time you make a design decision based on you making more money in the game, I think it's a huge problem, and it's stopping our industry from being more creative, end quote. Couldn't agree more, love to see it, and hey, if you can't get enough of Joseph Fares saying shit like this, then you should absolutely check out this week's episode of the Frames Per Second podcast, because wouldn't you know it, he is our guest. I can confirm that the man is just as batshit insane in person as he is in front of a Game Awards crowd, and I mean that in the most complimentary way possible, because his passion, his conviction, his insight, there's no turning off that faucet at any point, and the conversation we had was one of my favorites that I've had in the entire time we've been doing the podcast. If you'd like to check that out, it'll be live on the channel this weekend, also available wherever you get your podcasts. I'll leave a link to that below the like button. While we're on podcast, man, you could make like a 26-episode documentary podcast about Disco Elysium's developer Zaum, who just publicly announced their next project, an espionage RPG called C4. By the sounds of things, it's got all the things that made Disco Elysium great: a big focus on characters, dice rolls, a deep introspective narrative, and an espionage plot that's more slow horses than James Bond. Now, an announcement like this should be an unmitigated cause for celebration, were it not for the fact that the kind of stuff that's been going down at Zaum and those in its orbit has been an absolute shit show, to say the least. We've thought about covering it in depth on this show before, but it's almost impossible to do it justice. Broadly though, what you need to know is that all the key creatives behind the original Disco Elysium are no longer at Zaum after reportedly being ousted ousted over legal disputes, allegations of mismanagement and toxic workplace behavior, as well as through various layoffs and project cancellations. The company is basically Zaum in name only and a place to sell incredibly expensive Disco Elysium merch. Go honestly check it out, it's wild. The several offshoots of the Disco team and a bunch of outsiders who are hungry to be attached to the one true spiritual successor to Disco Elysium all seem to be playing a real-life battle royale with each other, switching sides, going rogue, trying to knock each other's projects off the field by strategically timing competing game announcements and fighting each other in court to keep players from playing the projects they're working on. The most well-funded of these outfits, Longju, has just launched a Kickstarter for their own successor called Hopetown, which was announced at the same time as Zaum's new game. Longju seemingly has the most tenuous links to the Disco legacy, but still has plenty of weight to throw around thanks to their big investor backer who has zero connection to Disco Elysium and who also apparently got himself banned from the Disco Elysium subreddit. Okay. Man, I'm really not doing any of this justice, but that's hopefully just some indication that all of these Disco Elysium projects seem to be like poison chalices right now, so tread very carefully around them all no matter how much you love the original. Oh, and I should probably mention that the lead Disco Elysium creatives, lead writer Robert Kurvitz and artist and designer Alex Rostov, are involved in none of these new projects. Last we heard, they got their own thing going backed by NetEase, which is a little worrying given all the news about them recently, and they piped up recently to give their blessing to an altogether different game inspired by Disco Elysium, but in no way associated with the legacy of it, called Rue Valley. Oh man, that was all so complicated, but you know what isn't complicated? Shooting shit with a gun and flying helicopters into infantry to see what happens. That's right, baby, Battlefield is back. That big playtest for the next Battlefield got underway last week, and even though the public playtesters that got invited were all under very strict NDA, wouldn't you know it, there was some leaked gameplay. Just a quick search on social media or Reddit will give you a glimpse into the next Battlefield, even as I speak, because weirdly enough, EA has been pretty lax about taking these clips down. You wanna know why? Well, we don't know for sure, but I think it's because it actually makes the next Battlefield game look pretty damn good, and EA are perfectly fine with that. There's no denying this series was in pretty rough shape thanks to 2042, but a lot of what has been leaked from the footage has the very skeptical Battlefield community feeling very excited. It seems a lot more grounded and modern feeling, the HUD looks really nice, the class system is back, and there's much requested features like being able to drag your allies to cover to heal them. We're not showing you any of the footage here because we'd like our YouTube channel to stay up, thank you very much, but just know that the vibes for this one seem to be on point. Here's hoping the 20 studios they've committed to this project managed to keep the ball up in the air until launch. A quick lightning round to finish off, Blizzard announced that BlizzCon is coming back in 2026. It hasn't been one of these since 2023, and this once beloved convention has been a bit on and off over the last few years on account of the whole COVID thing, as well as the whole Activision Blizzard is in court for being a really fucked up place to work thing, and they're probably confident that 2026 will be a worthwhile year for them to bring it back in a big way, especially since this will be the first after being completely acquired by Microsoft. Speaking of Microsoft, Forza Horizon 5 is arriving on PS5 next month, and it's been discovered that yes, you will need to register a Microsoft account in order to play it, and then use your PSN account to play online. Man, look at the kind of dystopian world the games industry has built for us. This isn't a huge surprise when you think about it, but it doesn't make it any less annoying, and I'm sure if the PSN store had reviews, this would not be going down well. Sony is getting a small taste of their own medicine right here. Speaking of Sony and messed up technological experiments, they have just secured the rights to distribute the next Resident Evil live-action movie. This is supposed to be a reboot film for the series, and it's being directed by Zach Cregger, who did Barbarian, and co-written by Shay Hatton, who wrote John Wick 3 and 4. Sony is so confident in this one, they've already set a date for it, 18th of September 2026. From reboots to Respawn, word on the street is that Apex Legends developer Respawn has cancelled a multiplayer FPS project they're in the midst of incubating. Apparently, this was the project that the developers who were working on a now cancelled Star Wars FPS moved on to, and now this has gone down the drain too, with a small handful of developers being laid off. I'm sure this kind of stuff happens all the time, but it's sad news regardless, and I sure hope that project wasn't Titanfall 3 because we don't need any more sadness in our lives. Speaking of sad news, Discord is apparently in talks to go public. Yep, that's right. That would be terrible. If you thought all the Discord Nitro stuff was useless, I hope you're ready for more, because what this glorified IRC program really needs is public shareholders to pressure management to put ads in it or dumb shit like that. Discord hasn't confirmed or denied these reports. It's probably only a matter of time. Ori and No Rest for the Wicked developer Moon Studios is now fully independent, the company has just announced. They were previously under Take-Two's Private Division label for No Rest for the Wicked, but when Take-Two was selling off Private Division, it apparently wanted to hold onto this one and this one only. Well, seems like whatever the reason was, Moon Studios put in a good offer, because now it's completely theirs again. Really glad to hear this, to be honest. No Rest for the Wicked, even in its early access, is just absolutely brilliant, and I'm looking forward to them getting the game over the finish line. And finally, ending on a nice story, Stalker 2 has reached a milestone of 6 million players, a great piece of news for a game and a studio that had everything working against it. A real-world invasion, plague of technical issues at launch, having to get this game running on Xbox Series S. But by gosh, they have done it, and I'm sure the Game Pass deal helped them out a bunch too. I said it in my review, but this is a game that's very likely only going to get better with age, and I'm glad GSC Game World is getting these sorts of wins early in the game's life cycle. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, we've got to start with the most self-indulgent announcement of the lot, which is of course Hideo Kojima's personally edited 10-minute trailer for Death Stranding 2, just to announce the release date of June 26, exclusive to PS5. And what a trailer! Oh my god, no one does it like this man. He gave us a look at the new actors Kojima is now BFFs with, which include Korean action powerhouse Ma Dong-seok, the legendary Deborah Wilson, and real-life husband and wife Elisa Chong and Luca Marinelli. A few years ago, Kojima said Marinelli could absolutely play Solid Snake in a film if you put a bandana on him, and goddamn wouldn't you know it, at the end of this trailer, the guy puts on a Solid Snake-ass bandana and commands a bunch of skeleton soldiers for the whole thing cuts to what is basically a Metal Gear Solid boss fight. In fact, there is a whole lot of action and gunplay in this trailer, which feels like Kojima trying to convince people that this sequel is a lot more than just a walking simulator. Regardless of what this game ends up being, this looks absolutely incredible. I haven't even played it yet, and I very strongly recommend it. I'm joking, of course, but man, I'm never going to be able to hide my Kojima fangirlism, and trailers like this remind us why Kojima is still in a league of his own. Moving on to other news now, and the Nacon Connect showcase went down last week. The French publisher announced not one, but 2 games based on Cthulhu mythos. The first one is The Mound, Omen of Cthulhu, which is based on the H.P. Lovecraft novella of the same name. This one's a 4-player co-op game that follows a group of explorers who land on an island in search of treasure in a lost city, and wouldn't you know it, there's monsters. Who'd have thunk it in a Cthulhu game? The Mound is also being developed by an outfit called Ace Team, who have been responsible for some pretty wild games in the past. They did the first-person melee fighting game Xenoclash, as well as the wacky boulder rolling series Rock of Ages. This seems like a much more toned-down idea for them, but you never know. These cosmic horror hallucinations can get pretty wild. This one's due out in 2025 for all platforms bar Switch. The other Cthulhu game announced is the Cosmic Abyss. This one's set in the near future, where you play an Interpol agent investigating the disappearance of people on a mining station out in the middle of the Pacific. And wouldn't you know it, there's monsters, and possibly even Cthulhu itself. This action-adventure game is a bit further out. It's slated for 2026 for all platforms bar Switch. Hey, did you ever play Styx? That was a neat little AA game that had some pretty great stealth design, where you played as a 100-year-old asshole of a goblin. They're making another one of these, which is a nice surprise. It's called Styx Blades of Greed. This one's boasting larger Metroidvania-style open worlds with lots of ways to tackle objectives like mind control. Could be interesting. It's due out at the end of the year for all platforms bar Switch. RoboCop is back, baby. Hopefully still sans jetpack. The developers of Rogue City likely sat down to watch that Carl Urban Judge Dredd film at some point, because RoboCop Rogue City Unfinished Business seems exactly like that, except with a different 80s law enforcer. This is a standalone expansion to Rogue City, where you need to fight your way to the top of a big corporate tower that has been taken over by gangs. Look, say no more, I'm absolutely in. This one's due out 3rd quarter of the year for all platforms bar Switch. So those were all the new games that came out of the Nacon Connect, but get this, I don't know if this was timed strategically, but Frogwares, the Ukrainian developer behind the Sinking City 2, re-announced the game last week. They launched a Kickstarter at the same time, which was fully funded in just one day, and at the time of writing, they've blown past their goal by 300%. Now, these guys had a big publishing dispute with Nacon in 2020 over the first Sinking City game, accusing Nacon of withholding royalties, fighting over the rights to the IP, and suing them for a bunch of damages. Tough situation for a Ukrainian dev with, you know, everything else going on right now. They finally resolved and settled that dispute at the beginning of 2024, with Frogwares seemingly coming out on top with the IP rights to the Sinking City. Now, with this massive Kickstarter success, I can't help but think this is a very well-earned and well-timed victory lap for Frogwares, wishing the team all the best as they settle into a fully funded dev cycle. If you're a beat-em-up fan, you've probably got good things to say about Streets of Rage 4, which was a continuation of Sega's classic beat-em-up series, but handled in a slick, modern, retro way. Anyway, the devs behind that are now working on their own original IP, which is starting to become a bit of a trend, and it's called Absolume. This takes the classic multiplayer beat-em-up format and sees how it might work as a roguelike, with a high fantasy world and some really nice looking art and animation. Some of the initial previews for this one are very glowing, but there's no release date for this one just yet, and it'll head to all platforms bar Xbox. Last new game announcement now, and it comes from the beautiful land down under, more specifically Bris Vegas, aka Brisbane. One of the standout indie game studios in that city was Defiant Development, who made a game called Hand of Fate, a really unique roguelike roguelite action RPG dungeon crawl that mixed deck building elements too. It released during that first golden age wave of roguelikes over 10 years ago now. Defiant Development are no more, but a lot of those folks have now announced Hordes of Fate, which is looking to continue the series, only reimagined as a Vampire Survivors-like auto shooter. Be interesting to see if this one has legs. Not sure where we're at with the Survivor clones thing these days, but maybe there's still some room for experimentation. This one's due out Q3, PC only. A couple of delays now. Just as last week's episode was going up, NetEase announced that the PS5 and Xbox Series versions of their free-to-play shooter Fragpunk would be delayed due to an unforeseen technical issue, though the PC version still went out as planned. They didn't give us a new release date, but knowing our luck, it'll probably be out by the time this video goes live. Killing Floor 3 was also delayed with no specific date this week. It was originally due later this month, but apparently feedback from the recent beta they ran was so bad that they decided to massively rework some stuff. A key item being the fact that they locked perks behind specific characters, and no one liked that. That rework is coming on top of stability issues and UI UX issues and weapon feel, and yeah, probably the right call to delay this one. We can kill those flaws when the game's good and ready. So what came out last week? Well, Split Fiction certainly made a huge splash. 260,000 concurrent players on Steam, 1 million copies sold in the first 2 days. And don't forget, you can basically play this game for free so long as you know someone who owns it. So those sales numbers are all the more impressive. The reviews no doubt held because critics were unanimously in love with this thing, even if, like me, they were a little bit iffy on the writing and characters. That's because the rest of the package is just so damn good. You can watch my review for this on the channel right now if you haven't already. Link below the like button. But let's take a look at what the other critics are saying. Split Fiction is currently sitting at a mighty 90 on OpenCritic, which at the time of writing puts it alongside Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as the best game of the year. PC Gamer gave this one an 87, saying, quote, an incredibly inventive, rapid-fire co-op adventure that never breaks its stride despite its dull protagonists. It's hard to imagine another game cramming so many surprises and script flips into a single 15-hour romp, but I thought something similar when I played It Takes Two. Clearly, Hazelight isn't done trying to push how much it can keep us on our toes. While these two stand out as the studio's most similar games, Split Fiction is absolutely trying to aim higher. More intense, more variety, more flash and spectacle, and it's paid off. This is the studio's best game and one of the greatest co-op games around, end quote. Well said. GameSpot actually gave this one a rare 10 out of 10, calling it, quote, a love letter to creativity, to stories, games, and the people who make them. It's funny, dark, joyous, childish, tender, cheesy, thrilling, and remarkable. All this combined with gorgeous environments, fantastic gameplay, and sheer spectacle make Hazelight Studios' newest release an early contender for the best game of 2025, end quote. So yeah, find a friend to play this one with. You absolutely will not regret it, I promise you that. Next up, Fragpunk is basically yet another bite at the free-to-play competitive scene from NetEase through their Bad Guitar Studio, and it seems to be getting a pretty good reception so far. Steam reviews are mostly positive, with 72% of the 14,000 reviews giving it a thumbs up. Some interesting perspectives on this one. The big feature for Fragpunk are its wild modifiers, which seem like either a lot of fun if you're playing casually, or the worst thing in the world if you're someone who loves competitive ranked play. Here's Steam user Weaselbee, who's played it for 14 hours, quote, this game is fun as hell, shard cards are almost like roguelike modifiers per round that keep you wanting to play more, because each round will be different. The menu is a labyrinth of more menus, but it's all for cosmetic bullshit. Stick to the play button and you want to keep playing, end quote. On the flip side, here's Steam user Psycho, who has played this game for 36 hours and has a very different perspective, quote, I had high expectations for Fragpunk. I was excited for a fresh, competitive FPS with its own unique concept, cast, and gameplay. Instead, we got a weird Apex Valorant hybrid that can't decide what it wants to be. Is it a slow-paced tactical shooter like Valorant, or a high-octane, fast-paced game like Apex? It tries to be both and ends up failing at both. The gameplay feels disjointed, the mechanics are unsatisfying, and the identity of the game is completely lost, end quote. Of course, the good thing about this one is it is free to play, so if you're at all curious, give it a whirl and decide for yourself. It's out right now on PC, and it's coming to consoles very soon. Moving on to Suikoden 1 and 2 Remaster. This is the re-release of Konami's cult favorite JRPG series from the PlayStation 1 era, and its remastering is either very faithful or too faithful, depending on who you ask. It's got a strong 81 on OpenCritic. Here's GameSpot, who gave it 6 out of 10, quote, this is a package of two great games that is serviceable. Outside of some interface issues that are mostly artifacts of the game's age, there's nothing wrong with Suikoden 1 and 2. In fact, they remain as excellent as ever. But it's hard to get rid of the nagging feeling that this remaster feels uneven between the weirdly contrasting visuals and the general lack of quality of life improvements beyond the bare minimum. Suikoden is a phenomenal series. These two games really deserve to be reintroduced with the red carpet, not the tacky doormat, end quote. Meanwhile, here's RPG Site, who called out all of the same issues as GameSpot, and took a glass half full approach and ultimately scored it a 9 out of 10. Quote, "The end result is a project that, like another Pixel remaster project before it, these are games that play and look just like you remember them and somehow even a bit better. Slight quality of life changes complement rather than complicate the gameplay," end quote. Next up is Wonder Stop, which is the cozy tea shop management game from Annapurna and Stanley Parable creator David Rendon, which deals with some really heavy shit. The big hook here is that you've got a reluctant protagonist, an ex-fighter called Alta, who is suffering from some massive burnout and very resistant to slowing down and resting and generally doing all the cozy game stuff. It seems to have struck a big chord with some critics despite the very light life simulator mechanics. It's got a strong 79 on OpenCritic. Here's the gamer who scored it 4.5 out of 5. Quote, "Wonder Stop balances the discomfort brought on by seeing a game strike so true at the heart of burnout, while being an absolute pleasure to play, full of delightful secrets and a healthy helping of whimsy. I'm awed at how well it's all balanced and how, despite some occasionally schlocky dialogue, it so effectively gets its point across," end quote. Ed's been playing through this one actually. Here's what he had to say. Quote, "As someone who's both experienced massive burnout and also a bit resistant to cozy life simulators, Wonder Stop's approach was very interesting. The reluctant protagonist, the constant conversations around motivation and perfection, self-worth and rest, all within a surreal setting that never quite makes sense. It's not a game with a loop you can completely lose yourself in, or a story that you can tie up neatly in a bow. It's a constant, messy state of limbo in basically all respects, which is clearly the point. Really makes you think, which is honestly a big compliment," end quote. So what's coming out this week? Well, on Thursday, March 13th, we finally have the release date of Midnight Murder Club. This is Sony's latest bet in the whole live service multiplayer thing. Only this one has a pretty good shtick. It's the one where it's a team deathmatch game in a pitch black mansion where you're equipped with a flashlight for seeing, a revolver for shooting, and proximity chat for talking with your team. Only the other team can hear you if they're close by, and they can see your flashlight trails, and they can get the jump on you if you're not careful. There's a whole bunch of traps and modifiers you can use to get the upper hand, and it seems like it could be a lot of fun with the right people. Sony is doing the whole guest pass thing here that gives you the best possible chance to play it. One owner can invite 5 other people to play. Let's see if they can recreate that split fiction magic. PC and PS5 for this one, and crossplay is supported. On Friday, March 14th is WWE 2K25 for all platforms bar Switch. So this is another 2K game with that amazing paid early access thing that everyone loves. So technically, you could have been playing it last week if you wanted to. Now, I don't know shit about wrestling, but I do know these games were really bad for a long period until 2K finally changed developers and they got noticeably better. Strong critic reviews for this one ahead of release, but the Steam reviews tell a different story with a lot of talk about bugs and 2K's infamous in-game spending. We'll check back in on those reviews next week. Jumping ahead to next Tuesday, the 18th, Pathologic 3 Quarantine is coming to PC. Man, talk about a game series with a cult following. Pathologic 2 was a brutal open-world horror survival RPG about the plague, but it had a lot to offer, and certainly a bunch of people loved the hell out of it, and it clearly did well enough because here's the sequel, and it looks slightly less fucked up based on the marketing materials, though who's to say. And finally, 33 Immortals is that 33-player co-op action roguelike from Thunder Lotus, the folks behind the excellent Spiritfarer. This one's due out in early access on March 18th, and looks really intriguing. Here's the thing though, this game is only releasing on Xbox and the Epic Game Store on PC. It's coming to Xbox Game Pass as well, but man, when you need to fill a lobby with 32 other people, the last thing you want is to be restricted by, you know, the underdog marketplaces. Hopefully it doesn't prove too much of a barrier. Definitely wishing all the best to the team for this one, but let's also hope that it arrives on Steam for 1.0, yeah? Alright, enough with those bright particle effects and saturated colors. Put this on your radar. Did you finish playing Indiana Jones: The Great Circle yet? Okay, cool. Now play Children of Clay, a bite-sized psychological horror game where you play an archaeologist trying to learn more about this ancient artifact that you got your hands on that is in no way fucked up, not even a little bit. Like, not at all. It's totally fine. Sure, absolutely. This one has a neat stop-motion aesthetic that somehow makes it all the more unsettling. Like this piece of rock could shuffle across the table and jump out at you at any moment. Maybe it will. Who's to say? This one's good to sit down with late at night, and it only takes 20 minutes to play through all of it. And here's the best part. It's free to play. And if you like it enough, you can drop a couple of bucks for a little making of booklet. If you're interested to check this one out, you can follow a link to it over on our Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and did you get that crazy My Little Pony fighting game on the Epic Game Store last week? Good, that'll be available on Friday. And following that, Epic's offering up Mortal Shell, which is a Souls-like clone that is okay. It's alright, it looks nice, it's got atmosphere, it's short and it's free. Not exactly best in class, but a solid effort with some nice ideas. And honestly, it's a pretty good Souls gateway if you're on the fence about these sorts of games. Now, Donkey Kong 94. That's a good video game, I don't care what the haters say. This is one of the new offerings for Nintendo Switch Online this month, and it's basically the sequel to the OG Donkey Kong, where you play as Mario chasing DK through a bunch of platforming levels to try to get future Mayor Pauline back. If you've played some of the more recent Mario vs. Donkey Kong games on Switch or Game Boy Advance, this is essentially the genesis of that style of game. The other offering on Nintendo Switch Online is the very first Picross game, Mario Picross. If you don't know what the hell Picross is, it's kind of like Sudoku, where you chip away at a board to reveal a picture. People who are into Picross just can't stop talking about Picross. The folks who made this game are still making Picross all these years later. There are like 15 of these games on Switch, so they must be doing all right. And finally, it's a new month, so it's time to check in on what's happening with Prime Gaming, and let me tell you, it's not bad. Right now, you can get GOG codes for Saints Row the Third, Mafia 2 Definitive Edition, as well as an Epic Game Store code for Crime Boss Rockay City, a bad game, which is a guilty pleasure for multiple people I know. Later in the month, you can expect bangers like The Forgotten City, Wolfenstein, The Old Blood, Legacy of Kain Defiance, and a bunch more, but we'll keep bringing those up as they become available. Our feel-good story for the week is actually one from my homeland, though not from my home city. In Melbourne, there's a shop that sells only fries. That's it, just fries, with or without salt, with or without toppings, with or without Vegemite. That's a joke, by the way. We don't put Vegemite on our fries, we do have our limits. Anyway, the name of the shop is Lord of the Fries, and if that name makes you think of Lord of the Rings, then you, my friend, are an absolute bellend, but you might just be dumb enough to be a senior executive at the Embracer-owned Middle-earth Enterprises. Yes, the company that's closed more game studios in the past 3 years than any other publisher is now trying to shut down independent chip shops because they actually took Lord of the Fries to court, aiming that their name infringed on the Lord of the Rings IP. I really do wish I was making this up. Of course, Lord of the Fries is a play on another book title, William Golding's 1954 classic Lord of the Flies. And if Golding were to crawl out of his grave and declare some beef with Lord of the Fries, I'd say the man had a point. But Middle-earth Enterprises? Hell no. Luckily, the judge ruled in favor of the chip shop, saying that Lord of the Fries was a variation on the trademark the business had used for 15 years, and also that Middle-earth Enterprises had cherry-picked examples, suggesting that Lord of the Fries had deliberately made design choices to capitalize on the similarity between the two names. So in essence, the judge told Middle-earth Enterprises to take a long walk into a big volcano, and a local chip shop in downtown Melbourne successfully bested the video games industry equivalent of Sauron. Poetry, really. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm off to play some more Assassin's Creed Shadows ahead of the review next week. 1 like equals 1 good luck to me for finishing this game before the embargo. And like I said, don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube or follow on Spotify so you'll know the minute that review goes live. Thanks as always for watching, and a big thanks to this video's sponsor, Surfshark. VPNs are the kind of thing that you hear about and you go, that's not for me. But chances are good that a VPN is actually very helpful to you for a variety of reasons, and I know that because I've been using this video's sponsor, Surfshark VPN, for years now, and I'm constantly surprised by how often it comes in handy. More than anything else, I appreciate the safety that comes from Surfshark VPN, since it encrypts your data to keep your personal information safe. If you're playing games, for example, Surfshark VPN will hide your IP address, which, depending on the game, might have been accessible, opening you up to DDoS attacks. The thing I use it for the most, though, is sidestepping geolocks. Surfshark VPN lets you browse the internet without being locked out of things based on your location. That applies to streaming services who geolock certain TV shows or movies, but it also applies to online shopping, since prices can often be different from one geography to the next, and so Surfshark VPN can help you get the best possible price when making a purchase. I actually use the full suite of Surfshark products, and there's quite a few of them that offer even more security and protection. Stuff like an antivirus, an anti-malware tool, real-time reports if a company that has some of your personal data gets hacked, and even a masked email generator that lets you create dummy emails when you want to sign up to something but you don't want to hand over your actual email address. Best of all of this is incredibly cheap. I really recommend clicking the link below to see just how inexpensive it is to properly protect yourself online. For real, if this gives you access to just one regional pricing discount, that'll probably go a long way towards this paying for itself. It's insane value given the freedom, discounts, and peace of mind, and if you use offer code SKILLUP at surfshark.com/skillup, you can get an additional 4 months for free. That's surfshark.com/skillup using offer code SKILLUP at checkout for 4 additional months free. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.